All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly will I establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Unequaled refuge, ornament of the world, your fame pervades the 3,000 worlds. You are the victor Vajradhara without a doubt. I bow at the feet of the Father Jigten Sumgun. Continually I think of no one but you. Compassionate one, grant your blessings. Dispel the darkness that surrounds my heart. Please bless me so that I may realize the unelaborated nature of mind. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, and the sun and moon. As a Buddha field, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields. Om Guru Deva.
Samjian Namji Sambhada Loye Chedra Chedava Chechon Dumon Dewa Gwe Chojen Golo Burdu.
Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the 2 vehicles and their combination according to the dispositions and likewise the mental capacities of sentient beings.
So we continue with the teachings on the 4 Dharmas of Gampopa, and yesterday we already spoke about the first one, second, and we're now on the third one. So we spoke about how our mind can turn toward the Dharma and how that Dharma can become the path. And today we continue speaking about how confusion can be dispelled on the path. And where we left off yesterday was when we were talking about the 4 conditions, and so we mentioned 3 of them already. So we mentioned the causal condition, the objective condition and the dominant condition. And today we will talk about the immediate or direct condition.
되네. 다 테마 타베 젠세 데 카리스나 다 랑레 신제 그 삼바 줄지 야. 랑레 신 기지와 조삼바 지야 디스칼레 커버 되나 다 가서 장고 혀. 다 삼냥바 다레 신제 바세다 창조 셈장야 알아. 랑 삼냥바 방 신제 바 지야. 어터리. 어디 니 창조 어다지 랑레 신제 바. 다지 가담 tsu 다 로종 tsu 나한테 요원 가서 키에다 저렇게 시행하지 단 디스토 차서 다 이마 야본 하죠
아,
여기 더 하면서 공부 또 뭐도 전에 당에만 가담게 로종 쓰지 있어야 여러 어디나나 콘도에 이나
코드,
그것도 뭐
nga 코드.
그런데 좀 이제
아,
아마 같이 코면도 쓰지 그런
어,
소리 가져서 전에 가담 로종 쓰지 있어야 여러 어디나 저렇게 랑킬레 바 총카 시하는 버거스 어다 텐트도 와 텐트 세제도 와 어다 저렇게 탐치 시하는 총카 탐치 랑킬레야 어다 텐트도 온다 다양한 바 창조 셈 태야서 봐 니마 가담 개위냐 또다 텐트 냠나는 텐트 배치 쇼사래 니마 가담 개위냐 체카 세제 요새 체카 하고
제가,
진짜 제가 산이 산마레나 니마 초 참마제 개발다 오마동 다 이제 정말 캡 세마동 또 정말 캡아요 사례 대체만 뭐 시쇼 사례고 되네 니마제 게시제 요새 게시팀에 커서는 자힌 바세세
그래,
자신 지샤키 신 요라 자신 자신 되네 자신 바세제 요레스 디킨들라 송 되네 디 공예세 경영고다라 배자 충충 샤셔세 자 카체제 데디 남다 케탄 저카 시안르치 총탄 팜카 랑크 코르 세다 센주 책제 요레세 어디 책베 공검사 첨보라 제지 공검사 첨보전도 삼다 추운데 베케 첨보 캔사전도 오산 어디 게시 랑 탐베 로종 책지세 어디 센서와 랑 뭐 책지세 어때네 리다 네 담아는 소리 요레세 네 배전에 가려야지 치워서 왔지 랑탕 백 로종 책지 사테레스 어때네 담아는 소리 요레 게시 랑탕 바르 요레세 라레스 어다디 담아스 슌로 근도 삼테네 뭐 손레스 그 샤만 타사다 뭐지 사자 바 타사 레스 타사들 샤만 카시에 되리 그 랑탕들이 뭐지 용서로 와 랑탕 다 총송스 요 말레스 라레스 어때네 다 하나 디담아 수요를 지어서 하고 나 다들 말하면 랑상 그 원바티 기타 보자는 다 수요를 지어서 와
그렇지.
원바 랑상 대사이 다 원바는 저 여러 어디 원바 랑상 원바티 다 보자는 다 수요를 써본다 준진자做다 수요를 지어서 와 상중바 세제 노래 니요레스
상중바,
음
상중바라.
상중바 당 노래바
음,
다 티니 보여레스 라레스 메디 어디 코니 본 첨보 면도 나레스 코니 본 첨보 면도 살아도 되네 다 게시 체크하고 그래서 또 알아 이제 코니 첨보 면나 담아대 매바다레스 다 상을 살이 담아대 요사 말해서 이나 코니 만참들에 가르에서나 데 다디 다다디 랑탕베 삽제 치하제 요라테 상용바세 디킬럽디 도데바세 치랑 치스 치랑제 로 겜바레 어달로 대사라고 추로 겜바레 치랑 치스 어텔라브레스 도데바서 디킬럽디 다 상용바 치랑 치 베차 치랑 케바요레스 어테는 치랑 치스 어다 텐트르세 라 어디 그만참 됐으면 내가 만참도 자서 말와 미키 라타 코라니키 라타 반나기 그거치 무슨 그 수치나 어디지 공이 뒤통다도 있어 단 참표서 뭐 잭시 지나치 잭시 yin lang samba na kupor chi gos zai si du chirang chi yin lang samba na kupor chi gos o tenru chi da tik ma jang res jong jia yin sama da ko ha xira ko yo ma da champi me do zi cai ti ku da ya bo yo sama re zang de teran ro sama de tenen xinba je de song re sa tenen sa jia xinba je da gadam ge xara da su cha le sa shu da su de tim shang yu
Gadam Geshe Shara.
ma de lang tang ba ti me du da cha shu de ge xia chi yo sa ro wa lang tang 다 샤라바도 제 야보를 샤라바스 가담 게제 살아와 샤라 어때 차쇼레제 어때 제 샤라도 제가서 송르사 제가서 제 송데 겐두 동타자 있는데 초 송 대송도 세 형도 다 송 대송사 디 배자지 그런 잠들 세이드 세이제 송kim도 생겨마다 봐요라 디 스티오 사르다 니마제 다 유른 거 되나 디 당와 되나 하나라 되나 초시라 세면도 tenrogo sareza nimaze ti geshi sharabata choten skoran rosho sarwa o tene choten skoran roshti du tene nara ti shuro chi nga chwa so ya ta chona chwa karo na a chi andre reze te kon sho sare ja na tse zai shu du tene tada di ko chega ba a tel al shiwa sare o tene karsana ta ngi mai pecha tsan ton sons 피해다 저까 시한지 중다 보고 랑을 랑셀 되게 자도 통송스 어전에 아니 긴다스 저거 어디 있어 어전 통송스 전에 제 das labdo da das labdo na das 어전에 어전에 quando va 어전에 딱히 다 저까 아 시한지 중다 보고 랑 게 세트스 고 송송스게 어떤 알로는 초본다 중송스 로 초 어디 초도 사보래 사보 말에 간류레즈 티레스 어 다처럼 알로 초나다 만초나 상제고는 다 상제 통도는 아 티비 초스민 타메레스 어때 뉴트네 아 zon레스 공这当晚前两天有位子提的是，我当年们做过的接受在哪的是，反正这当晚他拿到在去的是，但就那有人做过这类子，我真的也在哪的是，老抽是，光老种自己嘛吃，年吃去，我吃这吃的，真的吃个把这当时吃完，把早晚的吃送用多，当然他经济现在做了，吃的真的现在在动，那吃当嘛送去，真的强调身体，我们退休嘛哇。그래서 jarka kazen jarka kyan bu chongka rang fnesan da zo da 신체 kilo terwa
And so now the text continues then with this quote here on the immediate condition. The mere intention of equalizing self and others or cherishing others more than yourself, exchanging self and others' purpose becomes one's own. So this essentially is the practice of where we first equalize self with others, and then we exchange self with others, or in other words, we are putting others before ourselves. And there is a verse in the 8 verses of Training the Mind by Geshe Langri Thamba. And in one of those verses, it says, I will take defeat upon myself and give the victory to others. And so this is how the past Kadampa masters have practiced. There's actually one story about that particular verse here. And so in the long time ago, there was a Kadampa Geshe Cheka. It was Cheka. And he was a great scholar in many scriptures. The new tantric tradition, the old tantric tradition, the Madhyamaka, the middle ways. He was a really great scholar. And so he once came to visit another Geshe, a Geshe Chokshingpa. So he went went to visit him. And so when he was there, next to Geshe Chokshinpa's bed, his bedside, there was a little book. And he just happened to open up the book just to see what it is. And then he saw that verse, I will take defeat upon myself and give the victory to others. When he read that verse, he was really impressed. He was totally struck by this verse, and he thought, this is it. This is the most important, most precious instruction. And so then he asked that the owner of that book, where is that from? Who said that verse? And then that Geshe said, well, that's by Geshe Langri. And then Geshe Cheka asked, so how can I get teachings on this verse? Where is this Geshe Langri? And so then the Geshe said, you have to go there. He told him where to go, close to Lhasa, to meet him there and receive the teachings. So then Geshe Cheka went on the road to find this teacher to receive instructions on that verse. So he went close to Lhasa. And then after having been there for a few days, he kept asking around, so where is this Geshe Langre Tangpa? And people said, oh, he had already passed away. And then he said that who is his his representative, his lineage holder at his monastery? Is there some kind of monastery, somebody who looks after his monastery? And people said that, yeah, there's two people. There is one called Shongshupa and one called Dotepa. And however, so they're both his lineage holders, but they're not getting along. They have some conflict. And so then when Geshe Cheka heard that, he thought, then that's not a good sign. I probably cannot really receive the instructions because if I want to have instructions on this particular teachings, but they are not getting along, that's not a good sign. So then he ended up not going there. But what he actually didn't know is that the reason why they didn't get along, the actual reason why they didn't get along is because they were both extremely humble. And so Shangshupa said to Dodeba, oh, you are much more senior, you're an older practitioner, so you should be the one who is the lineage holder. So he said that out of respect to the Geshe Langtangpa who had passed away. But then Dodeba, he was also humble, and he said that no, but even though I'm older, you are the real scholar. You have studied much more, so you should do it. And so they just couldn't get to an agreement on who should do it. But there was no real other reason why they didn't get along. That was the conflict. So basically, what they were really practicing is that verse. They wanted to give the victory or kind of the high seat to somebody else and not take it themselves. There was nothing else wrong. But anyways, Geshe Cheka didn't know that. So he ended up not going there because when he heard there's some conflict, he didn't feel good about it. And he ended up not going there. So he went somewhere else. And so he kept asking, like who would be then the better teacher to teach that. So then he heard about this other Geshe Sharapa. And so he went there. And when he came there, this Geshe was teaching to 1,000 monks, and there were some teachings going on for days, and he stayed there all day long. But then he didn't really hear the words that pertain to these instructions. So eventually he thought that maybe it's no point staying here because I might not get those instructions. And so then in some of the break times, he went going around the stupa, and that's where he met the teaching Geshe Sharaba. He was also going around the stupa. And so then Geshe Cheka approached him and said, can you stay for a little while? I have to ask you a question. And then the Geshe said, sure, I stay. What question do you have? And then Geshe Cheka said, so I saw this verse in a little book that said, I will take defeat upon myself and give the victory to others. And I really like that verse. I'm really very impressed by it, and I want to know more about it. How profound is this teaching? I want to know more about it. And then the Geshe Sharapa said, well, whether you like it or not, that's what you need if you want to be enlightened. There's no way around this teaching. And so then Geshe Cheka asked, do you have the instructions? And then Geshe Sharaba said, that's my main practice. And then Geshe Cheka said, can you please give me these instructions? And then Geshe Sharaba said, I can give you the instructions, but that will take a long time. You will have to stay here for a longer time. And so Geshe Cheka then agreed, and he ended up staying 6 years, during which he only received teachings on these 8 verses of mind training. And it is said that Geshe Cheka, after these 6 years, completely uprooted all of his self-grasping. And so now it's really mainly always comes down to self-grasping. It's our self-importance and thinking about our own benefit more than others. And because of that, mainly we cannot do so much about our afflictive emotions of anger and attachment because our self-importance is just too deeply rooted. And so that is why this is an important practice. I will take defeat upon myself and give the victory to others. So essentially, this is the practice of putting others before self. So,
that's强调 先大为先强调这些，但是说就接送呢，我的接送呢，他的讲究难的话，强调甚至求呢，给这钱各位总了当别两大多，但是咱们这些就叫今天他们恰说，我的强调先说就接动呢，我的呢各位总了当那的，但两大多吧现在啊，但是说各位那动呢，的强调先不要接动，但是咱们些些的那个意思，他上节些说没有的，些故事这钱子吧。送些年头，
this is good, Yanka. Sorry.
这这件子吧，送些年头，这出去，我头些的强调什么的话，我这头些强调什么些的没痛的说说，我这人你看，他当没这边恰恰呗，也是就是个种的话。
Tanda yang gigen ala lab sama.
No, ya no.
Oh yeah. And so then in the coming back to our text, so when one cultivates the mind of enlightenment, a mind of bodhicitta, that is what will free one from the prison of samsara. Then in the Bodhicharya Vatara, Shantideva said, if wretched beings trapped into the prison of cyclic existence were to generate bodhicitta instantaneously, they are called the children of the Buddhas, and the worldly gods and humans will bow to them. So the moment one gives rise to bodhicitta, one becomes a child of all beings become children of the Buddhas. And so there is a form, a child of the Buddha's form, of the Buddha's speech, and of the Buddha's mind. So the child of a Buddha's form, this go di karari dachomba, go dachomba.
Who say Dachenzi Balazo?
Dachenzimba.
Niento Ransand.
Dini kusung kare.
Oh, the Chanchosma.
Marisung.
Zone the Niento Ransand Lason.
Dini go.
Dachenzi Balandoa.
Dachenzimba. Dachenzimba, okay.
Hula.
Rahula, yeah. Right. Yeah, so Tini Rahula said the story. Took is in this. She dang a tick the hack or in a turn out this.
Oh, yeah.
Mari go.
Dachenzi is something for Hula.
Oh, already calling me put it. I'm sorry, I don't think it's early here. So okay, so he's the Buddha. So we're talking about the Buddha Shakyamuni now, right? So his body child, his physical child basically is Rahula. So that was his actual son. So the historical Buddha Shakyamuni's son, he had a son that was Rahula. So that's that. And then his speech children speech children are the solitary realizers and the hearers. And then the mind children are the bodhisattvas. Yeah. Det var.
Tog sig chancho samba se de so so
Ja.
me to de la so de
Mm. Lapsa.
lo san ji jian la ji bi chong me cha chi se ne chu ge de
Ja.
ne da nga so jun ju na yo wa de de ba ya kwa chi na da chancho sem de ya to ge de ce种ro de jun ju na ka de de ba me zi xin ji chi na no de ba la de ji kwa chen bo da kon de ne yun de jor jor wes真的好艰难，进每天写的，但这块没事把全部起呢，起手呢，别抢着写呢，他啷个都家在的照顾呢，没把我点过的是，我们把我点呢，啷个做出过的是，他们都家在的，啷个在干嘛吃饭中咱们这用呢，我这没把我这用呢，这个做出过的是，我这放点的用的做就我这当一的，所这块的这种用呢，那长久先点呢，这块的怕差多的，或者他做过的是。我真的看点的有那种，真的花钱他们进不进？我真的花，但是好友他几多年嘛，他都在强求什么样，特别开钱包的意思。我真的我做工作能中原考虑，没就强求什么，是的，在中原考虑没穷嘛，在强求什么一种了。我到中国公园忙不完的，也有在强求什么的意思。我在中原玩，我在去真的，这边乌是吧？没事在这样的运动是就有呢。这边乌是呀，这边乌方是呢，他没事在弄，他得的是。sem te chancho sem ya bo je din so so chu bo le da sem chu bo le o te ndi me si de yang de yin song do
And then if one gives rise to bodhicitta, this has the power to purify all one's negativities. And then it says in the Bodhicharya Avatara again, like the supreme alchemical transformation, this impure body will become the precious and priceless body of the conqueror of the Buddha. Hold firmly then to bodhicitta. So, meaning that if you cultivate bodhicitta, that will be your guide on a difficult path. So, for example, if you imagine a kind of non-virtuous kind of state of mind being a difficult path to travel on, if you're traveling on a difficult path, the difficult path of practice, it's good to have a guide that can help you cross that difficult path. Because on that path, you may encounter robbers and other different threats and dangers on that path. So it's good to have some kind of a protector that goes with you along that path and who can guide you through. And that is bodhicitta. If you have bodhicitta, bodhicitta will guide you across that dangerous path of practice and bring you to the state of liberation from samsara. And the most important along that path is your mindfulness, being very heedful and mindful of bodhicitta. In the Gongchik, Jigten Sumgön says that bodhicitta is the most supreme, the best protection sphere. There's many different protection spheres, protection circles, but bodhicitta is the most powerful one. And also in the Bodhicharya Avatara, it says bodhicitta will bring you the wealth or the riches that liberate you from the impoverishment of samsaric existence.
真的，咱那样子多讲究那个，我是深究职业那把它错的，深究职业那把它没上对的那呢，就是人家人间正常没办，就是我那享受生活吃完那边松是然后，他深究这些就有的是，这家讲讲，那家上这样就那个是，我别才拿起的，是但我说享受生活用呢，我说旅途没上旅的玩意那的，就是为管着我吃的有的是，这家庭人间正常没办。 rinpoche zayar jor kore, ten nagi nga zo duyu tirin tang mi ba. Wate jor kore, wate indi chancho semte nga zo tenpoche rabon zi kore, songwa.
And so that's then the meaning of that quote here from the Bodhicharyavatara. So again, it's like a supreme alchemical transformation. So an alchemical transformation is where you transform ordinary metal into gold. And so even though you have this ordinary impure body, if you give rise to bodhicitta, you become a child of the Buddha. And then you're no longer impure and ordinary. You become like a priceless body, a precious body. And that is why we should hold on firmly to bodhicitta.
다 지당 당아랑 수 들어와서 다 다르세 다와 신체기 류라 제바나 담아타 지연 시차데 다베 신 류 삼바 제송나네 담아타 지연 시세레스.
And thus, when the thought of cherishing others is generated in your mind, it is called the immediate condition. So when we put others before ourselves, that is the immediate condition.
저는 지당아랑 소니도 먼저 니 창조 샘做老个了晓得먼저 니现在뭐 봐서는 다这说说예 지점이한테 뭐 봐서 주파서는 다 뭐 바로 심바抽了说的치야한테 배讲的像呢아주 다자가 도 전에 넘어서 내 건로지 삼나데 뭐 봐. 그거 로야한테 주파 어디 창조 샘때 지점바데는 뭐 봐지 남 바로 심바抽了说냠내 치야한테 주파 어텐트로와
And there is the aspiring bodhicitta and the engaging bodhicitta. And the aspiring bodhicitta is to have an intention of doing something. And the engaging bodhicitta is to actually do it. For example, to actually practice the 6 paramitas. Or for example, the aspiring bodhicitta is your aspiration to go to Bodh Gaya. You want to go there. And then actually going there, actually going the path there is the engaging bodhicitta. And that's to practice the 6 paramitas and so forth. And so thus it says the mere intention of equalizing self and others, or cherishing others more than yourself, exchanging self and others' purpose becomes one's own. So whether you equalize self with others or you exchange self with others, that love that you have for others is what will ultimately lead to your enlightenment. So in order to become enlightened, you actually need sentient beings. if there were no sentient beings, you couldn't attain enlightenment. There's a story about Trungpa Gunlaik when he once visited Lhasa and came into the presence of the Chowo statue. And so then he said to the Chowo Buddha, a statue there, so long ago, you were a cow, and I was the is it a cowherd? I was the cowherd. But then you practiced with great diligence, whereas I remained lazy and continued to wander in samsara. Now you attained enlightenment, and today I, the lazy one, prostrate to you. So.
tene ngema de kadam ke yang geshi domba seje yora de drom domba la bo drom domba ti lo ma de kunchi som seje yo sa kunchi som se panja la som le lo tene kadam geshi chenba je kamlong ba se so sa de kamlong ba ti lo ma je de drom domba je yo sa ro chawa je te je du geshi kunchi som be ra ze men po to zo sho sa
Geshi böcker.
Boto passion sana boto.
Boto ti punchi graft.
Re je kunchi punja zong ra je. Te kong khar chen da wo je da zhong dong be no ma ra je chi yo sa ro. Se kong ne gen du jia cha ma bo le chu zong xiao xiong de wo je la be se. De gen du te ya wo sa che zong re se je re se da. Ne ga se re se. Ko zong.
So ja, kochu songu dos, den die pe ja dos.
Ja, da ngom sa che te je no sta zong sa ro. 안 부총 쓰셔서 제 메인다 제 분자송 묘라 부총 공 카르신도 제디 나제 주노 벤조 카르 오나 고송 투생 젠 바신기도 송사로 다 되게 많아 이제 송사로 게 좀 베 하나 데레제 메 곰바서 쇼사르 게시제 메
게시 그 사마 게시로
레 가담 게시 좀 부총 쓰다 금치 좀 묘라
근데 고민 카레 somebody
곰바라 쇼사 곰바 나서 곰바 어때 곰바 콩 카르시다 제 곰 젬바 자디도 제 라르세
곰갸베
다 제이래 생게 많아 이 정도세 다 저와지 그게 계신 감롱바세 제 여러 그래서 저와지 여러 주사다 이게 감롱바 콩 카르시도 제 라르세 카르시 그것도 지레세 콩은 다 무시 도도 너고 말도 무시 도도 노세레
무시 생각
뭐야 카이
뭐
하거라 고 말 생각 똥네 도도 제 라르세 근데 되게 좀 동배 샤모 푸이디다 차 테모 투카르자다 젠차 당레스 좀 동바
샤모 푸이드네
라파니 보노 테모자 좀 동바 코레 믹슈라 다 신도 뭐 차치스 추사와스 다 공치 효레스 좀 남다세 다 공치 효레스 대 연태 망보 효레스 이나다 이나 코가그 말레스 시라 송레스 어디다 가르레스 토나다 섬지한테서 그렇게 동안 섬으로 당 틱 닝제제 공모도 효레스 닝제제 다 섬지야 타반제 섬지 이제 닝제제 제셔 이 공모도 효레스 닝제제 뭐지 그거 동안 섬도 당데 섬지한테서 닝제제 팀을 효레스
There was another story. So there was a well-known Kadampa Geshe Dromdumpa, and so there was a Geshe Dromdumpa during that time, and then during that time there were 3 of his disciples, and they were also Geshes, and they were brothers. So 3 brother Geshes, they were Dromdumpa's disciples. And so the name were Geshe Buto, Geshe Puchung, and Geshe Gompa. So those 3 brothers, yeah. And then there was another Kadampa Geshe, Kalungpa. Kalungpa. And so also another Geshe, and he had a disciple, and so his disciple met Dromdumpa. and so and this he was also a monk, so this disciple, and he met Dromdompa Chalsunga. So he met Dromdompa, yeah. This is so Geshe Kanglungpa's disciple met Dromdompa, and he asked him a few questions. And so he asked him about those three brothers, basically. And so he asked, so what's Geshe Buddha up to these days? What's he doing? That's the first brother, yeah. And then Geshe Dromdompa replied, oh, he's teaching the Dharma to hundreds of. Sorry, I mixed it up. Sorry. So the one who asked the question is Geshe Dromdompa, and he asked the question to that monk who was a disciple of Geshe Kanglungpa. Okay, so Dromdompa asked that disciple who was that monk. So he asked him, so what's Geshe Buddha, this one disciple, this one Geshe, up to these days? And then this monk replied, so well, he is teaching the Dharma to hundreds of monks these days. And then Dromdompa said, oh wow, that's great. And so then he asked about, so what's Puchung up to? So that's the second Geshe brother. What's he doing these days? And then that monk said, well, he is offering all of his wealth to build holy objects of enlightened body, speech, and mind. And then Dromdompa said, oh, that's also great. And then he asked about, so what's Geshe Gompa up to, the third brother? And the monk said, well, he's just meditating all the time. And Dromdompa said again, oh, that's wonderful, that's great. And then he asked about, so what's Geshe Kalungpa doing? So that was the teacher of that monk. And so what's Geshe Kalungpa up to these days? And then the monk said, well, he's just depressed all the time and crying and kind of burying his head in his hands. So he's not happy. And so then Geshe Dromdompa that he folded his hands and he said, this is really incredible. He is the best of all. He's the one who actually practices the Dharma, and it even made him cry because why did he feel depressed and unhappy all the time? It's because he was actually always thinking about the great suffering of sentient beings in samsara, and he was overwhelmed with great compassion. That's why he was crying. So he turned out to be the best practitioner. And therefore, in order to dispel the confusions on the path, one needs to renounce the hearers and solitary realizers by contemplating love, compassion, and bodhicitta. And this is called the stage of a path of someone with great mental scope. And then next we come to the fourth Dharma, that is for that confusion to dawn as primordial wisdom. And so now when we cultivate love, compassion, and bodhicitta, that will weaken self-grasping. But then in order to totally cut through self-grasping, to uproot self-grasping, we also need to realize emptiness. And that is what will transform confusion into primordial wisdom. So the actual meaning of confusion dawning as primordial wisdom is to realize the empty nature of all phenomena.
等等罗碰些吧，来是他就拿啥的吧，当你画下看吧也，我不画下帮忙就是他当把你画下的话，看送呢，我碰这边画下的话，帮他别的，实际上我让从我碰这样的，别强的，但我现在这种这样了，别口气不学，这帮样的那我要嘛的听，那但是你们在一起送的看送的的，对吧？帮他别的送的哇。
Shantideva then said, as through integrating the imprints of emptiness, the imprints of phenomena will be destroyed. So integrating the imprints of emptiness is that, so now we habituate to emptiness, meaning we are reversing another habituation. So right now we are very habituated to the imprints of phenomenon. So that is, we have a very strong habitual perception of self and others, me and others. That's a deep imprint. And that is not easily abandoned because it's a deep imprint. But through reversing the habit, by habituating to emptiness, instead, it is possible to, through practice, abandon the imprint of such dualistic grasping.
真的，可能世界上先把些这些有哪一帮人先把些，但这把穷呢，到外面是他们在工作了，基本上我们这把穷呢，到外面生活了，可是总体没哪一把。
So yesterday we mentioned some advice from a Sakya, a scripture, where it says that if there is a grasping, if there's any grasping, one doesn't hold the authentic view.
真的，咱主把看的是，那主把看的是牛毛把那把多花的意思，那主把是看的是牛毛能多的，那牛毛把自己真的恰当毛什么的，但俺没把俺自己，先没把了先自己的，我真是恰当这样的，能多的的，是。
So then what is the mistake and what's the confusion? It is mental affliction and conceptualization. So it is our emotions and our thoughts. That's the confusion. And because of these confusions arise because we falsely believe in the existence of a self and we falsely believe in the existence of other. And because of this misconception of self and other, we develop these thoughts and afflictive emotions. And so that's the confusion.
真的上不出来就这个事儿话就，听到了，能做马来钱不的，能做马来钱不的是马来吧，马来吧现在能做的了，但当时恰当么从的了的，但所产品那种多头熊嘛，马来现在那个蛮通嘛，那熊嘛，那路是蛮通嘛，对吧？那个人不那路是蛮通嘛，但是马来是，可别讲说东马是，但可别这边价钱不的，我等讲说呢，嘛东着个的，是可别讲说钱不呢，东着个的是。我们拖定自卡了呢，卡些七八没把，没拖把定自己拿了，人家七拖呢，南卡现在拖上来有嘛的是没把错了是，卡些七八没把就是，南把人家从拖上有嘛哇，我真的一些的呢，几把的有什么哇，我这把没呢的，切就那几把些才有嘛的是。
And then in the Samputtanama Mahatantra Tantra, it is said, conceptualization is a great ignorance by which one falls into the ocean of samsara. So this great ignorance is to not see your true nature, is not seeing of your true nature. And here we don't mean seeing as in visually perceiving, like seeing with your eyes, but it's being aware and recognizing your own true nature. Being aware of your own true nature, that's not being aware of it is ignorance. And not seeing your true nature, you fall into the vast ocean of samsara. Abiding in the meditative concentration of non-conceptualization like the sky, there will be no doer. So when you abide within a non-conceptual meditative state, the mind becomes like space, and within space there is no obstruction. So it is an unimpeding state, and since there is no obstructions, there's just space, there's nothing to grasp at. And so when there's nothing to grasp at, there's also no one who's grasping, so no doer.
Mima tamju je de cha longba zai mo ku pa je yo sa mo ku pa dong zai pe ku pa dong sa ra ko cha ta nga tane chom jeng ro ge nga ra to ji mo xian ba no ro je zai so lo to ma ri la re se de kya ko je men ti chang bo da so sa ro ti mo ke gang wen zo mo gang ku ba ma ro sta he se da e ku ba ma ro je da he se ka na te da he de ne这个冲中搞点卡，有啥的？这个把气死的了，刚被刚气从那啥着个了，不从哪来的噻？那可能见面听讲了，他我哪说啥的？这个把同样就那么多噻，个把有么了？晓得个别这路老是的，但是他可能这搞点卡啥的，你可说啥？见面听你们个把成长这可能刚被刚大些，这个你现在可能一把哈过来噻。어쨌든 나도 유라 대화를 편인 거 되어 때는 나도 하고 좀 말아 하잖아. 나 된다 해서 소소 주의를 받아. 소소소소 때 뭐시 받지 거 사례.
There was a story about a person who was a bit stupid, and so he decided one day, I'm going to town, but then he was worried that like maybe along the way I lose myself, and then I might not be able to come back. And so then his wife was quite smart, and so then she tied a red this thread, like a little rope, a little thread on his toe, so he wouldn't lose the way. So then he kept going around and around, and eventually the thread broke off him. And so then he didn't have his thread to go back home. And so eventually he did find himself home, but then because he no longer had that thread on there, he didn't actually recognize that it was him getting home. So he thought he was lost somewhere, and I guess he wasn't really sure who it is that goes home. But the real person who went out to town, he is not back home because the thread's not in his toe. So that was quite conflicting for him, and he told his wife, maybe I did something wrong. Where is the person with the thread on his toe? I knew he had one, now he doesn't, so it has to be somewhere else. He must be lost somewhere still. So then he eventually fell asleep, exhausted, and while he was sleeping, she tied another red thread on his toe. And then when he woke up, he realized, oh, it's me, I'm home. And then he finally realized that he wasn't lost after all. So it's a bit similar to that, actually, not seeing our own true nature. But that is when we actually find out what we really are. It's really quite similar to that story.
근데 살아 시네 스타트럼 살아 시 침보시 점스 침보선 살아 하라고. 시네 롱기 출라 쇼케 조바 롱나 추나 쇼 송도 잠베도라로 출라 도에 소단죠. 잠베确实是多能强的是在农作修讲，我在多的长的反通多那种，我才那么强，就是都会周边，我们送米的，我在都会周送的，我在南跑的在周送的，但是现场手米呢手种通过的是，其实在这边就，所以我当时俺那说，他在钞票嘛的，真的是在一起个嘛的，怎么钞票那有了哇？别想着想那个说，他面对角色的，你怎么别啥些钞票有的？ 나랑은 집에 차보제 요리야. 될 때는 사이킨 특과 차도 쇼리다. 집에 차보제 요로. 어떨 땐 사이킨 특과 된줄 상만 통도 있고 제네 소소소소. 야와인 야외 제네 그 당시 첩되는 나기 요리 예다인 제나기. 다 메카리나 상은 소소 제네 상만 첩되는 나기 사이킨 특과. 어떤 줄 차도 쇼리스. 어떤 주에 주바 주바세 다 말해 봐도네. 되는 가서 ngami nga song da chadani de den dang zi zel den de there's actually trip in the channel for this
And then the great Brahmin Saraham said, when the wind enters the water and disturbs it, even the gentle water moves like a stone. So what it means is that when a strong wind blows through water, it may make the water look like it's hard, like rock. So basically, the wind causes the water to take on some shape that it wouldn't otherwise have, and that shape may look very solid, like a stone. And then when the formless ignorance is disturbed by conceptualization, it becomes very solid and hard. So because of our belief in a concrete reality, because our conceptual thinking is very solidified, we see things in a concrete way. We see things as very solid and hard, when actually there is no real material form. To us, it appears like material form, solid and hard. And then if you tell someone it doesn't all exist that way, that's not what it really is, people usually don't believe that, because that's what they see in front of them. It's real, a solid thing. And that's because the reason why we see things in this solid way is because of our solid grasping of the conceptual mind. And then any realm that we find ourselves in appears that way. For example, if you're born in hell, then hell appears very solid, like a real solid existence, or a hungry spirit, or a god. It all appears as a real solid physical existence. And that's because of a solidified grasping at a self, essentially.
근데 다 틀라 스티아 샘키 내로는 도만 다미 봐. 그래서 다도 스톱들이요 말씀. 아주 샘 대단 다미 세트로라 다 세트 스톱들이 계시다. 나 세트 요와. 다미 바레스. 말로.
And then the verse completes with, generally the reality of mind is that it has no self from the very beginning. So there's just this concept, this thought of me, I, and that's all it is. Aside from that, there is no real self that exists.
Chuda mi ba nyam ba ni rangsem do ne ma che ba dong ba ni je rang ji to sla do ta ngo po tham chi che ba se ngo po tham bi ta che de yo pong pong kham jin chi de song zi ba na wa ta chu ji da mi zo re se wa de rangsem do ne ma che ba dong ba ni ta kang za da mi ko shu ta de de da chu da mi se de kang za da mi se ni do wa de zo wo de ze sha sang ma da si so sa re ne nga zo ta de wo ko de wo chi na 강사다 세는 가 세제 나랑서 참말 현재기 여러와 나 세라서 강사다 세제 어떻다 지제 지 근데 나 세제 접대요 맞다 다미 쇼지 다미 세대 땅에 자라 게 여러 게 배상다 게 라과 게 강반도 뭐 다서 여러 배상다 나 지우진도 게 지우지나 지우조는 원래 진 협品 처와서 봐 십자 지진 주체 망보错的他지우세 다 그냥 그런 지우조 처도 요 맞자 And
then in the Guhya Samaja Tantra, it says, all things are devoid of inherent existence, aggregates, elements, sources of perception, sense sources, apprehended and apprehender are abandoned. The no self of phenomena is sameness. One's mind is unborn from the beginning. It is the nature of emptiness. So we speak about two kinds of self or selflessness. So there's the self of a person and the self of phenomena. And so here, when it speaks about the empty nature of the aggregates, elements, and sense sources, so this is mainly talking about like everything that I grasp as mine. So it's the selflessness of phenomena. And so in terms of the self of like the selflessness of a person and of phenomena, there's many different ways of explaining that, but to put it in simple terms, so the self of a person is to have this perception of I. There's this me and I that exists, and we all have that just naturally. It's a natural thought of I. That's the self of a person. And then realizing that that does not exist, that's the selflessness of a person. And then the selflessness of phenomena is that, so the self of phenomena is when everything that you grasp as mine. So my things, my cup, my hand, my leg, this is my bell. So it's all, everything that's like mine. That's the kind of related to me. And that's the self of phenomena. And then when you realize that all of that does not inherently exist, and it's just a heap of many different causes and conditions coming together, then you realize the selflessness of phenomena. So it's basically selflessness of self of phenomena is to label things, to give it names, and the selflessness of phenomena is to realize that these do not actually exist.
tene tedar da mi bala marek be da si so da mi bare da marek ba da ne simba chi tene da chu se tele den xian song chu so tene tele den ran zo ze yu san xian zo ze le au xian chu tele le na so so de se den kam song ko wa ru do dong a ten yong re se kam song ko wa ru do dong a kam song ko wa kam song se na dong kam song mi kam song na go wa Kurwasen da kazan shiba ima rai chok da ndwa rai chok yora awatin chamde de do ngara was
So this self is mistaken by ignorance. And if we mistakenly perceive a self, then we will also mistakenly perceive others. And due to this mistaken perception of existing self and others, we accumulate various kinds of karma. And this karma then leads us to experience the suffering in the 6 realms of samsara. So we wander through the 3 realms, which is the form realm, formless realm, and desire realm. And we wander in the 6 types of beings that we also mentioned yesterday. So this existence is suffering.
tene tedara yang chiki den pa pe sen den da lo jaga lo kon chura se den do tik song sa sima nam de na sa wa sima nam de na da yu na ne xian chi se wa da se de yu na xian yu ba xi ge de da ge cha lin zi tang da se wa de da xian ni zi wa zi se na da cha ba zong da da se na da che dang wa wa de cha dang chi tini tang ne zhe wa yes de tini bo so zhen zhe hong de ne pa tam chi yong wa ne pa tam chi yong wa yin ne ku za wa te 니구 티에 자와젠스 니구 니바 탐지 자와다 테레스 대양직 초다와 뭐 제베 초 다와나레 조현사로
And it is then said by Dharmakirti in the Pramana Vartika, which is a text on valid cognition. It says, if there is a self, you also perceive others. Others are apprehended. So if you think there's a self, you also think there's others. From self and others comes desire and aversion. From these 2, faults arise. So because we are afflicted, we create all kinds of faults. The root of all faults is the view of the transitory collections, meaning the view of the transitory collections is the grasping at the true existence of our aggregates.
tene xie zong tene jarwe ki yom de pase da yom do de pase den do khasan chi sarwa da tang xian da tang da ke chu ni de da tang da xian de ko shu da yang da mian tong si yang da ma le si mian ba dong chi pe dang ni ka lan de ba ba chi ba xian so so ji wo da nga zo ma xie ba zo da fe wo nam kan de ba jiang de na ji de spe xia xiang na wo nam kan de ba jiang de nam kan de ba jiao zuo ma ba de na ji da zai mi ba le yo ba chi de wo te re spe nas tokpen du xie tou lang 다 칼라제나 tou 요지리 좀 tou 요래 지라다 양 뭐지 지나 tou 요지나 어때 톡바제 나셔도 tou 콘도 치면 손에 미자 잘반 줘서 어때 tou 코페 나온다 손이나 근데 다 자한도 그래서 다 자한도 그래서 다 현황신 다 자한도 그래 특히 집에 다 캐는 봐 양다 면도 다 등도시 양다 면토지스 와든 다도 양 답에 도시 말이스 원면에 똑같이스 세단 집에 지금 용모돼서 와든 집에 가지 못나 들어되는 용모돼 그래 다다 다견 면지 남바를 정하고 와다 다견 맞이는 남바를 장조 그래서
Die
아
Tog die Gola, Kare Songson die Therapist
예,
cancel.
장다신 다 도세 뭐지 칼라나데 나 도우려서 제 준제 오나 도요 말와 미나제 도과제 나샤나 다 도요래 좀 뭐까지 신앙지도 전반 도요래서 다 도요래 칼라나게 칼디스 당에 도사사 송상
Trinity Trovaris.
다들 주바와 도요 말와 칼라나
Yeah. Then in the abridged Perfection of Wisdom, it is said, all beings are attached to the quicksand of name and form. Living beings wander in the wheel of cyclic existence like a wheel of wind. And deluded beings are like a deer trapped in a net. And knowing this, the wise move like birds in the sky. And then, so for as long as there is this fixation to the true existence of the aggregates and of a self, there is fear of something that doesn't really exist. For example, if, for example, you have a bowl of food in front of you and you think there is poison in that food, and actually there is no poison in that food, but you think there's poison in that food and you think it's true there's something poisonous in that food, then that will affect you to the point where when you eat it, you might even faint because you believe that this is what it is. So this real experience comes from falsely grasping at things.
사송에 시바 양 테니레 스타트에 용 디파나 티나서와 어테니레 스탐 그정도선 로반다다 메인 소탕 담자 로반다다 메인다 소크시신 담테 차디 소소소고데 젠지요 다 메인텔라 제지바 요라나라소 담라 차스 롱코로다 롱코로 롱코로 나지 코도 롱코도 딱과 코도도 에 어떤 나이든 코라 코리나 코시도레스 로벤트다 르다 제츠르 르다 제츠스나 트린도아 르다 타소냐 년다고 저 샤야도와 타과다 샤 르다 강바 홍산의 지 소로로와
Immer 가르쳐도
아
이 르다 가르쳐도 뭐
뱅이 뭐좀 르다 지야스나 제 르다 좀 지야 타과다 년다고 저 샤야도 제 쉐도다 베자 라바다 제 이나 제 지로 그러다 그래서 뭐 봐도 소로로와 이든 조연 추가를 다 자수반하게 됐어. 다 타바선 지침에 공방도시 가랬어. 아티나 수도 그랬어. 시랍데마 칼라 차이스. 어떤 시랍데인데레슨 남칼 차나이. 차들 다티나 추구 말와데. 자티나. 어디 주스 동거와.
And so now going over this verse, so all beings are attached to the quicksand of name and form. That is now meaning that we there's this quicksand that traps us, something that our grasping that traps us. And that's the grasping, the belief that things are real and they have names, so that we label them with. And so in this way, beings wander in this wheel of cyclic existence, like a wheel of wind. So a wheel of wind, meaning that it always keeps turning. And then deluded beings are like a deer trapped in a net. So when a hunter goes hunting for a deer, he may set out a trap, and the moment the deer steps on it, it closes down and it's in the net. And then the hunter can take the deer. And we are in a very similar situation in samsara. We are trapped in this net, and we don't know how to get out. We don't know how to get out and become free, become liberated. Whereas a wise person moves like a bird through the sky. So a bird is not going to get trapped in that net. The bird flies straight over the net.
저는 로폰 로조 시간에 지시 풍부한 지바요반 지시 들랑간지요. 가서 풍부한 진지요라 제반지야베 뭐뭐요라. 지시 들랑간지세테 요레 신간지요바 레레스. 레텔데는 된 감정 걸바 제임 그레스.
And then Nagarjuna had said in the Ratnavali, as long as there is apprehension, grasping at the aggregates, for as long as there is a grasping, for as long as you're grasping at a self, you will continue to grasp at the reality of your aggregates. And so through grasping at that self, that I, there will always be karma, and from that karma comes birth in samsara.
that's the local Shiva is on the Shiva Maris on the water. Local baby is that Jitang around so low Bechan low, that Jaja Gupjan Saji Hanamdo Saravasha, the Tivarka Yetinia, the Barking Gunya, Ramada, you see the Tivarka this. No Sigavasha, and you think also that long tea that as a zero what he conquered to say, the local baby is on the Tekuna, you bandravasati knowledge on the one.
The Konani Chupa.
Setting the danger of Nansina, Pujad, show ship showing on those, in terms of
Chupchishanira.
the sheet or water. They get danger, the sense and they get danger of they get danger, they give Panma danger your what in the boat Jadaji, what Jadaji.
The Konani Chupara.
I read the Konani, there was, they say, not in what there was a tina is on the or the data against the bacha, so the data against the bacha, tell no bashiran, so that so chat is at him, so nobody down, they want to say one answer. Or then it here on is. You thought, tell an yes, what Gunjung, then you pay for mumble, they tend to one. Nova Gunjang, your motion, Nova Gunjang, your mobile, your mobile, the Gange copy. They go, is that Gange copy? The Gange copy could be the one thing you is.
Here it says there's another quote by Shantideva. Actually, in the Tibetan footnote, it says that actually it's not by Shantideva, but it's by one called Acharya Bebe. And so also we have to understand that we're talking about scriptures that now have been taught 800, 900, many years ago. And throughout the centuries, many different editions have been published and texts have been distributed. So it's possible that some originals may have gotten lost in the process. But so it says in the footnote that the original actually comes not from Shantideva, but from Acharya Bebe. And that source is found in the Dege print edition. It's volume number 108 on page 42. And so in that verse says, desire arises through grasping at me and mine. Aversion arises when this me and mine is harmed. All faults arise from these two, and beings will be affected by mental affliction. So what that means is that so first, all attachment and aversion come from grasping at me and mine, and attachment and aversion is what leads to all faults. And it's these faults and these afflictions that affect sentient beings here. Actually, literally, what it means is it exhausts, it wears sentient beings out. So all the suffering of samsara that they themselves create is exhausting.
That's a neat thing on this. That's a Shiva, Junjuk now, sorry. Junjuk now. 지대한 타는 세와 강요 당선 지대한 세와 세와서 노세치야 노세 강 지대한 동안 지니고 어다 노세치는 지금 동안 좀 되게 다들 지발에 총대 대체 특고 초지 제시차 세와단 지대한은 세와 노세 당야도 소소 중첩치야 치 특별 망보 노세 당셔 네 세와 강요 어다 당지 세트리스 지대한도 절대는 동안 망보 좀 그랬어 어떻게 되게 다들 지발에 좀 당진 제체 되고 초지 제시차 다 당지는 제 첨보제래 난 제 첨보 我开始那个搜索接班子，先弄菜当，这连那让人你去动啊弄去，弄去，你这边这让人用的嘞，我他那个搜这，先弄菜当特别让那，后来搜提起，那米的扩容的嘞，我听的，我听动啊他这他就让他是，这是当自己的。
And then Shantideva said in the Bodhicharya Vatara, whatever violence is in all worlds. So here, violence also means whatever harm exists in this world, whatever harm exists in this world, whatever suffering exists in this world. So literally, whatever harm exists in this world is what causes all the suffering in this world. And all of that comes from grasping at a self. So there's so in the reverse order now, because we are grasping at a self, we experience suffering. And because we experience suffering, we harm other people. Or in order to protect ourselves, we cause a lot of harm. Why? Because we are selfish. And in the end, that leads to suffering for ourselves. And therefore it says, so what does this evil spirit do to you? So the actual demon is self-grasping. Self-grasping is the greatest demon that harms you the most. So it's because I believe in, I want the best for myself. I'm selfish. I harm others. In the end, I'm actually harming myself. Temporarily, I may be able to harm someone else, but in the end, this karma will always come back to me as suffering. So the actual demon that causes all the suffering is my own self-grasping.
先从是他的大人，这把来咋是来呢？可是后面得到用是，我当可是后面对得到他来钱不上也吧这样，他在穷穷这样的他没那说这样，他他就在穷穷钱不起来上面呢，我真的他就这样就是了，我真多得来家吧，现在有啥多得来家吧，现在哪了？啊，你那成半年干哪里做了很多，我真多得来家吧，现在多得嘞。 我这来那把那说的，这样做那说中是那说西是，我这就我把做的那这今天那说来了解是，我但今天那说是来了解个的是啊，我这种多，但这我呢，城里多啊，我那做什么也不在当中呢，这伢路上没怎解有了，伢路上没怎解多啊，我听到这周间那个伢这没这这个咋着我先运着我这也没这没这多啊。 咱这样呢，我呢，他是这已经得没得的，这已经是把酒过呀，我身边那知道，这把浪都是咱们酒啊，哦有了，没了啊，他最多啊，但你可今天他做来了几，现在个说给我们给这机会，提前机会他来那说这样，那今天他说来了几，是的嘞。
Then, so karma is accumulated by grasping at a self, and through karma one suffers in the higher and the lower realms. So in a sutra called the Sutra of 100 Karmas, it says, from diverse karma, diverse beings are produced, and then and in the Treasury of Abhidharma, it says diverse worlds are produced from karma. So diverse worlds are produced from karma. For example, if karma is very powerful, if negative karma is very powerful, the world of the hell realms is produced. And then if negative karma is less powerful, then maybe one is a demigod, or in another realm is produced. So all the various manifestations, the diverse beings are all produced from diverse karmas. For example, if you go to it seems like Ruben meant like an aquarium, which is kind of like a kind of fish zoo, where where you look at different kind of fish. And you see all kinds of different fish. You see like big fish, small fish, different kinds of colors, all kinds of different fish. And so maybe from on the one hand, it might be quite entertaining and really interesting to see. But on the other hand, it's actually also very sad to see, because it's really kind of it really shows it's a display of karma manifesting itself in all these different worlds and forms.
저는 나랑서 제발이야 라왕 토베 말에 서진 틀리 나랑 가서 매제만 매세바 말봐. 근데 그래서 이 심바 조고야 좀 당고야 나는 윤대제 다대 뭐라 때 저선 가서 뒤나 제제 좀 싫어요 말하든 아주 거야요 말봐.
And we don't have so much control over where we will be born, so it's not entirely impossible to be born as such a fish in the aquarium. It's possible. So that's why it's good to think about that a little bit and to feel sad for them. And of course, when also myself, if I'm going around and not going for some looking like for entertainment, looking like some interesting things, maybe you don't always think about these things, but so it's good to bring that to mind.
근데 다 상제 중라 다 땡초 남데 레지 이바 마트 송장 세다 레키 이바 mambo 레스 도르드나 게임 메케니 시바자 게벨레 데는 덴로 와 디게 메케니 시바자 메겔레 데는 겐로 타 동안 좀 메겔 데는 겐로 동안 세 레스
And so even though there are many classifications of karma in the words of the Buddha and the treatises, in brief, one should know the result of virtuous and non-virtuous actions. From non-virtuous actions, the sufferings of the lower realms will arise.
근데 다 로폰 파베스 로로 송사를 엄마는 제트마 세티나서 도차 시당 데모 좀 티치레는 메게 대긴 년도 참치로 세워든 되는 년도 로그레 송사로
Then Nagarjuna said in the precious garland of the middle way, actions produced from desire, aversion, and ignorance are non-virtues, and likewise are the lower realms. So meaning that actions produced from desire, hatred, and ignorance lead to birth in the lower realms because they are non-virtues.
근데 로폰 시발에 계스다 전주 나와서 남에게 전주 나와서 그죠 메게 발에 동안 좀 늘리 녜타 늘리 치다라 녜타를 인생권도 다 그래 근데 바시 잠베래 소 메게니 이거는 다 가두 타는 좀 소소소소 제 냠내치 다 메게서 봐 뇽땅 뭐든 지켜야될 다 녜타 가두 타는 제 타리아 삼보다 인생권 배송치야지 네 근데 바시 잠바래 소 근데 잠도 쪼어제 당하는 거야 개침본도 정도
And Shantideva said in the Bodhicharya Avatara, suffering arises from non-virtuous actions. How to be free from it? I will think only of this. From virtuous actions, the happiness of the higher realms will arise. So we should always have that in our mind, thinking, how can I free myself? When there is suffering, I recognize that it is from my non-virtuous actions, and then I reflect, how can I free myself of this? And through reflection, I abandon non-virtuous actions, and day and night continuously I apply myself with effort in virtuous actions.
다 시에서 다 지관 오래 다 시에서 계획 토리 대화 중에 다 개발 다리 매개 등연로로 사 계획 된 토리 대화 중에 로폰 파과 다 로폰 파과로 말해 괜찮아 마차 시에다 데모 티지네 개화です개별에는 된로로 제와군도 대화를 줘서 대화 다스 다 점점 재미 숨이다 숨이 이제 청소 대화 용원지 스타말로 하셔야
And then again, Nagarjuna said, so actions produced from non-desire, non-aversion, and non-ignorance are virtuous. From virtuous deeds come the higher realms and happiness in all births. In the meditative concentration of the four limitless realms of Brahma, the formless realms, and so on, will experience happiness.
저는 엄마 시작해서 되나래서 수점 전에 대화 대로로 따위 공방 쪽도 저 저다 생각도 넘바 수점도 야고 좀 돕는데 수점 대로로 그래서 따위 공방 톡톡 그래 정도
In the 400 stanzas on the middle way, it says, with morality, one goes to the higher realm. With the view, one achieves the supreme state. So through ethical discipline, ethical discipline will bring you to birth in the higher realms, and the view leads you to the ultimate state.
저는 다시 음악 좀 봤어요. 배제제로 음악 좀 봐. 대신 하나 가서 제군 남라 대화공도 봤어. 제군은 신장 탐지로 대화도나 대화공 제군 남라 대화 롱추 메는 있어다. 롱추 메는 제군도 대화요 말스. 롱추 지는 중재 투배 첨반에 다 상지 좀 돼야 돼요. 롱추 진발 되는 좀 그래 시계 투배 담보 진배 담 다종 저 투배 상지 좀 돼야 되겠다. 바로 지금 저기나 담보도 진배 담 송레스.
And then in the Madhyamakavatara, the introduction or entering into the middle way, it says, all beings long for happiness. Without wealth, they have no pleasure. Knowing that wealth comes from generosity, the Buddha first taught generosity. And so when the Buddha taught the 6 paramitas, he began with teaching on generosity, because this leads to outer well-being for all beings.
난 도르드나 개바다 매게니 강이야. 추가이 비지가 시바 쳐스. 다트인사 개바다 매게니 강이나 추가이 시바 쳐스나. 대 니가 시잖아. 다자 개바다 참당가도 개바 가서 지금 휴지리데 개바 법나 셀랍소. 와텐도 뭐다. 대 매게 난 지바요레 지바 침보레 개바신 다텐 되면서 대 매게 나라. 와텐 추가다 뭐레스. 대 셰고레스.
In brief, one should know that virtuous actions and non-virtuous actions are the same in being mistaken. So what that means is, yesterday we mentioned even if we practice virtuous actions, if we do virtuous things, if there is grasping in the mind, then they become the 8 worldly concerns. So when there is grasping in the mind, then both virtue and non-virtue are confusion.
다 군접 창조 시험 공부 대장 뇌지 탐지를 주제는 지바. 뇌지 탐지 주제는 대치배 출라 마타 차바 대양 추가이 정도다. 그런 거죠. 숨어도. 텔레 집에 출라 마타 바 차바. 마타 바 그래서 저희 산 추가를 좀줘서 말해 해다.
Thus, meditating on conventional bodhicitta itself is produced by a composite phenomenon and causes and conditions. And a phenomenon that results from those is pervaded by impermanence and is also mistaken. So whatever is relative, compounded, or impermanent is in that sphere, that kind of scope or sphere, that domain of confusion.
근데 참스 살아 하시네스. 온데 닝겐 바셰 거나 코르발에 네 살와 토마ጆ스. 닝게 지구이나 다 살와 토고 마스. 다 돈이 토고 말스. 돈이 닝게 송든데와 고쇼레 송초사레. 돈이 닝게 송든데와 닝게 지구케 안타와 탐진심에 거마도 토고 말스. 코르바 타르마조 시바탄스. punso mai punso tembe sense punso mai da ninge jibu gomdena nyamne pusum sobas mares sodo da ninge jibu tembo izamna te esa mares punso yana pusum so da gamba on ninge jibu gomdena te pusum so gamba jor bere sungso da chakwa na zai gamba san chakwa chosho sa re sungso da toni drwa ona te ninge chakwa yo marwa wa tendu gombo re sungso sa re
Right. And then the great Brahmin Saraha said, meditating on compassion alone, one will not achieve liberation. So one will not attain enlightenment only through compassion. One also needs emptiness. And so also through love and compassion only, it says faults cannot be eradicated. And so that is because the ignorance, they're not in contradiction with ignorance, meaning that if there is only love and compassion, there still is ignorance, because only compassion also leads to some grasping, some attachment. To be free from that attachment, you need to meditate on emptiness. So therefore, in order to attain enlightenment, you need the union of emptiness and compassion.
대단 다 돈이 이제 송대하지 안 가도 이제 냠냐 치용도 tin상 전도 봐. 안 동반이 단인 게서 공부 거셔 잘해서. 어떤 회사 말해. 그래서 다들 배장 가서 냠냐한테 찾아 친구 따위나 제 장한테나 본인께 장식 내야 돼요 사례 다 되면 이제 심지어도 제 마당 와지 당분 가서 점으로 심지도 야본 동거로 와 되지를 전에 다제 찾아 친구 냠냐한테 내야 되고나 대강을 공부도 되네. 본인께 장식 내야 돼요 사례면 이제 강한테 아제 이제 제 공부를 상태라 남포니 지난 저셔서 말해. 어때 이제 다 돈이 이제 송교 선소한테 동반이 냠냐 대강지 이게 장식 내야 돼요. 나도 당보 점으로 심지티 이거 하고 지요. 같은 심지는 너세 당고 말아. 이게 대 냠냐다 동반이 나 대강 냠냐 치들이 되네. 이제 장식 대한 거 사례에서
So regarding the practice of unified emptiness and compassion, from a practical perspective now, nowadays often people think that practicing the union of emptiness and compassion means that you're staying in the state of emptiness, and from within the state of, and then in that state of emptiness, you meditate on compassion. So you cultivate compassion, you think of compassion while you meditate on emptiness. Actually, that's not what it is. So when you meditate in a state of emptiness, you're resting in a state of Mahamudra, in the natural state. Compassion is naturally present because was your initial intention. So you begin the practice with taking refuge and cultivating bodhicitta. Because you cultivate bodhicitta, you will not harm a sentient being. So that is your kind of default initial, kind of the foundational state of mind is you are not harming sentient beings, you have compassion, you have bodhicitta. And then you go on to the practice of Mahamudra. So then once you meditate in a state of Mahamudra, in a state of emptiness, you don't have to, you're not actually contemplating compassion. You're not thinking of sentient beings, this and that, because then that would create another thought, another concept when you're actually resting in emptiness. So you're not developing thoughts of compassion while you're resting in Mahamudra because of your initial intention of the motivation of bodhicitta, not harming beings. When you then come to Mahamudra, that state of mind is already present and it doesn't need to be cultivated separately. It's naturally present. So you just sustain the state of Mahamudra. And so that's what we call that union, or practicing that union of emptiness and compassion.
다 돈이 이제 공부를 해서 다 저자 친구다 와서 그냥 장한테 대가랑 이제 제 공부 거서 상황 티버 갑더라. 제치딘 어디 남포제래 공부 제 공부 자주 말해 이래. 어때 자마도 되네. 유령 공고도 자마도 되네. 남도 어때 고야마도 돼. 그 닝게랑시 대한이거라. 돈이 닝게 돈이 닝게제에서 다 공식 나송说的 돈이 또送的 닝게랑시 제공 그래. 어때 정도와. 제가 돈이 세도돼. 가시 안가나서 돈이 세려야 제 너치驱动吧的，他这怎么可多？他这为啥嘛的？东西些东半年就原民他的，但娘俩现在说产品的路去娘俩的，提高了买我讲的那的呢，东西这差了是啥的，现在情况现在这才差了。
So and that's because sometimes people think that when they practice emptiness and compassion, that they have to reflect on compassion. So they think that while they're meditating in a state of Mahamudra, then sometimes they have to think about reflect a little bit about compassion. But if you do that, you're just generating another thought. And if you generate thoughts, then you won't be able to sustain a meditative state, and you're actually thinking. So then it will take you a while to come back to a meditative state. So in that meditative state, you don't have to develop any thoughts at all. The compassion already is there, kind of as a basis. It's already there. In the Gongchik, it actually says. So sorry, it's not Gongchik, it's Milarepa. Milarepa said, when you realize emptiness, that then when emptiness is realized, compassion will naturally arise. And so then also we have to understand what is meant by emptiness. So some people think that it's kind of like an empty vessel, like kind of a state of nothing, just kind of a vacant vacuum state or kind of state. But it's not that. Emptiness really means an absence of inherent existence. So it's neither existing nor non-existing. If you just sustain an undistracted state of resting in the nature of your mind, that itself becomes emptiness or Mahamudra. And then again, Chandrakirti says in the Pramanavartika, that commentary on valid cognition, since love and so on and ignorance are not in contradiction, the fault cannot be eradicated. So, as you mentioned, if there's no meditation or no realization of emptiness and just love, love is also related to ignorance due to the grasping, and therefore ignorance cannot be completely eradicated. The view of emptiness and ignorance are in contradiction, and therefore meditate. So the direct opposite of ignorance is the view of emptiness, and therefore to uproot ignorance, one must meditate on emptiness. And by realizing emptiness, you will be released. All other meditations are for the purpose of emptiness. So in order to finally uproot self-grasping, you need to meditate on emptiness. And then the kind of relative bodhicitta, cultivating love and compassion, all of that is for the purpose of ultimately realizing emptiness or realizing Mahamudra. And we need that because we cannot realize emptiness just like that, just instantly like that. But first, we have to weaken self-grasping, and we weaken self-grasping with love and compassion. So we make it smaller, and then emptiness takes care of the rest. So emptiness then eliminates the subtle remaining self-grasping.
근데 시에서 주바ተ니 도마네 류지 초반 두마지 주바ተ니 소 샘근으로 야고 소 냠나 치제 따지나 도마네 나 연태 참지 류지 초데 대바리 피닝 곳에도 두마치레스 제바미 바도 비투서 다 제바미 베도스나 제 바나미 바 방자스 랑자 요마르스다 방자레 랑자 샘근고라다 방자 랑자 도요 마르 가서 송지 남 포텔 대한테 샤 딜레소는 그나 저는 바나미 바 해지지바 해지지베 셰차스 원 해지지베 쳐서진뭐 이些차로 비레스 티가 인데스 나메라레베 남피에만동 이시엔통 승天만동 상진통 정도.
Then it says, so when you realize that the delusion from the very beginning is originally uncreated, then that understanding leads to knowing, to this innate wisdom wherein there is nothing to be abandoned or adopted. So when you realize that this self does not exist, has never existed, then there is no more dualistic thought of subject and object. But there is no subject and object, then there is nothing to adopt and nothing to abandon. And it's because of abandoning and adopting that we accumulate karma. And so by reversing that, by realizing that there is no subject and object, the innate primordial wisdom will manifest. And Milarepa had said, I do not see consciousness or dualistic consciousness. I see primordial awareness. I see no sentient beings. I only see Buddhas.
근데 로폰 파페시네 쿠르바탄 양년데 인슈오바 많이 쿠르랑시 시면 양년데시 조가 샤스 어떤 쿠르바다 양년데서 지당 알아서 나도 처방 모섬데 송 추송도 근데 쿠르바세 차로 그라 어떤 쿠르바세 때서 저 처방 모섬도 하고 저들 그것도 약보면 받지 냠내 강서 자송나데 양년데스 다 라이 말에 춘추 있으나 라이도 말에 춘추 있어 되는 사례 지수말에 이렇게 non-juva-yiji namshen-tes, non-juva-yiji namshen-te, mato-tune marek-des, non-juva-yiji namshen-te, mato-tune marek-de, le nyomong-gunji shi-tsa-yis, le nyomong-gunji, bo-na-rang-re-yi-she-des, wo-de garbo-yon-ten zo-ban-yong-s, wo-de garbo-yon-ten tam-bi, ta-zo-de-yo-re-es, wo-de ko-yam-lan-chi-de, yon-ten-song-zo-do-sar-wa-te, do-na, wo-de nyang-yon-de, ni-shu, ni-sian-zi-do-ya, te-kar-san-na-nga-rang-zo, ni-zi-cha-ro-ko-re, nga-rang-zo-te, mato-du, do-na, da-de-de, 말에 있을 때는 그런 참여 말에 들어이나 텐데 중에 좀 가안도스 텐데 롱중 롱도 사람도 롱중선은 말에 인두지타 텐데 중에 중요하더래 어떤 롱도 선은 말에 가는 두지 남시 처만 가는 그랬어 어떤데 어떤 텐데 롱도 어떻게 차셔 사람 되고 그러와 티니 시바르샤스 양연대시 줘 봤어 저 샘네로 어떻게 하는데 양연대시 줘 그래스.
And then Nagarjuna said, samsara and nirvana are not in two different existences. They are not two. And knowing the reality of samsara is called nirvana. So what we call samsara is the confused state of mind, because we are confused by attachment, hatred, ignorance. We wander in samsara. So to reverse it, we have to recognize our own delusions, have to recognize my attachment, my hatred and ignorance, and see its fault. And then if you're able to see that and then rest your mind in meditation, that is how you reach nirvana. So samsara and nirvana are one and the same. It's just the only difference is seeing it or being aware of it or not being aware of it. Milarepa said, when unrealized, the inner moving consciousness is called ignorance, and it is the basis of all karmas and afflictions. But when realized, it is self-knowing primordial awareness, and all enlightened qualities come from it. So if you practice, all qualities will reveal themselves from within you. But not realizing that mind, we continue to grasp at self and other, at the dualistic existence. And so there is these 12 links of interdependence. And when they progress in a forward moving order, it starts with ignorance, and then there is karmic formation and so on. There's 12 links that keep repeating it themselves. And that is what produces samsara, this forward-moving cycle of the 12 links of interdependence. And then when that movement is reversed, then the reversal of these 12 links leads in the other way back to ignorance, so back to seeing your true nature. So that is reversing each of these steps, bringing an end to conceptuality. And finally, when you reach the first link, you come to ignorance, seeing your true nature, and there's no thought. And that is nirvana. So it is just a difference between seeing or not seeing your own true nature.
then Papan Daga is in those, and Doti Nala Karzon, Sam Donna is in the Sanjay Shan to Messi, and to hear Rat to go on Zonduata. The similar Marie Zong Song said, Gordy Watinana. Some thought Sanjay in zones, that's Marie Sam Donna Sanjay songs.
In the Sutra of Wisdom, of the Wisdom of Passing, it says, knowing the mind is wisdom. And there is no other Buddha than that. Also, Marba told Milarepa, when you see your mind truly, you see the Buddha.
That's the long answer. Well, that's it. That's that double chip. So the rise is not any them, but not more chip. Double Jorva, Mato Shan say that Juba something. Lord Juby, you my is. What in it is over the tongue around some matching. That all should. What over the Matopat and they must go so the tenants in it, but Telemochi. Then take it on what they have as a sort of gonna. Then Juba, that's it. Lord Juby in the you my in, but Lord Juby, you my. That's the tongue so tell you what. Then the Rara is shady. Markelam the easy Jew man said the lobby. Say you're at the social Christians your answer. So the social Kinyams young, let me move it, Choto and move it, so what the social Kinyamachine. The Yams John was said. The Julamana Harrison, Chacha to be human, Tondam in Jazam Jamans, Chuni Tondam Jazam Jaman, Chuni Sepchen, you can't be. Bombala saw you my is on the one. Chaga Chowris, that's simply about Chowris, Chacha Topi, 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 Galacabores, Chacha Topi, human. Chuni subset, you can be, so Chuni sabore, subject you can be, Bombala saw you means that's like this from Lamsan shit to be a Galacabores, as Chuni sabores.
And then it says, to realize it, on whom should one rely? It will only be realized by way of deep devotion to a qualified master. It is not the objects of verbal expression or analysis by the mind. So to realize the nature of mind, one must follow a qualified master with devotion, receive that master's instructions, and practice them. And then what is realized is beyond the realm of verbal expression or conceptual thought. So it's not something you can express in words or even think of. So the master points you toward it, but also cannot tell you about it really, because it's something you have to experience yourself. Tilopa had said that it is self-knowing, primordial awareness, which means you have to know it yourself. It's not something that can be shown through words or thoughts. The nature of mind has to be experienced, and this is how you will know it. Then in the Uttara Tantra, it says the mind, your true nature is very subtle. The essence of your mind is very subtle. As it is very subtle, it is difficult to see. The true nature of phenomena in the world is very subtle, very difficult to see. But if you meditate, you will recognize it. Without practice, it is very difficult to know it just by viewing them.
근데 다 제단 자 갈래 가보 되시도야 갈래 가보 니나 알아서 제 갈래 가보 혼자서 샤한데 말이야 냠냐치 고무자고 셔 고무자 냠냐치 되는 독합치 고셔 되지나 뭐 갈래 갈도 뭐냐 상마도래 그 상제야 상마제 나 소리나 지파리 대바리 그님고 심장 상마요리 되네 네바 냠냐치야 네바는 그 사과 뭐 상마요리 어떻게 그 생각나서
So it is a little bit difficult to realize, but then you shouldn't think that, well, it's just too difficult. I just can't do it now, so you just let it be. So you shouldn't do that also, because if you make an effort and you keep at it, you keep meditating and practicing, you will eventually realize it, because many people have done that before us, because they practiced, and they are not different from us. We are the same. We all possess Buddha nature. We all have the potential to practice. Everyone can practice. And if you do practice, there definitely will be a result.
야, 다다다 들어 샤샤나드네 니군 칼라치 되네. 다다. 그렇지로지나.
So let's stop here for lunch and continue in the afternoon.
야, 들어계시.
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind, root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yadams and assemblies of Buddhas, bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratikya Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of mind as such, and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. 추수 니바로 시카고 추수 니바.
Yeah, we meet again at 2 p.m. Chicago time.